Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Hey everybody, welcome to Squirrel. This is Jody.
And this is Candace.
And today we are talking about a romantic topic, but it's not romantic as you think it's going to be. It's falling back in love with your work in progress, or maybe something you put in a drawer a couple months ago or a couple years ago. I won't judge. And so I thought we would have a lot of fun talking about different ways to reconnect your love story with your work in progress.
I totally need this.
I think everyone needs this. I think everyone has an abandoned love child somewhere.
I have several.
And just reminding ourselves why we wanted to do them in the first place. We're going to get into that. That's actually one of our things we're going to talk about. So today we're talking about rekindling romance with these poor, unfortunate projects with some helpful relationship advice. I'm going 100% on corny today. It's going to be amazing.
Well, it's Cupid season.
It's Cupid season.
We
get to have fun.
We can do that.
The first and probably most important point is reconnecting your why. Like, why did you want to write the story in the first place? And so I want you to go back to when you first fell in love with a specific idea. The thing that keyed off the idea for the story in the first place. Like, was it a quirky character? Was it a clever twist? Was it a really unique world? If you allow yourself to sit back and relax and revisit these feelings of that initial excitement, it's going to remind you why you wanted to do the story in the first place. And then you can go back in with kind of that energy and that excitement that you need.
That's good. For reconnecting the why, it really comes down to why do I want to write, period. Not so much about the work in progress, which I know that I will want to get back to, but there should be a joy with writing, and sometimes we lose that joy. Like, I don't know, maybe it's like
when you spent 60 hours on a project and you're
like,
I don't feel like this is going anywhere.
Yes.
And I don't know if I'm ever going to be done.
Yes. Right. I mean, there is a need for me to create, but I need to put my creativity and imagination somewhere. And I think it's easy to forget that we love something when it becomes frustrating sometimes, and I still, I love my kids, but they can frustrate me.
Oh yeah.
But, so I think it's good to just, step back and evaluate what brings you joy when it comes to this specific project. Does that sound good?
Sure. I like it.
Okay. Second one, I'll start. So you have an experiment with a new angle.
All right.
And I love this so much because I had to do this. So I'm going to go in a little tiny
We love personal
story.
Examples. I forgot to add them, so good.
I totally did that. So when I first was published, when I first signed the contract, and it was with a Vivid Tear story, and it was kind of a hot mess. Won't lie. It was kind of long-winded. I had a lot of different POVs, and the publisher said, okay, I want you to limit the POVs. We want 4 only. And we want 2 of them from these 2 different characters that I never did a POV from.
Wow.
So I had to take the story that I had written with these characters, just to give you an example, and I'll just throw this out here so that we have, sorry, this is a long story. I had a chapter with this girl named Katya and this guy named Reynolds. And I had to remove their points of view and tell it from a character named Taryn. And so I wanted to tell the same exact story that was happening, but from somebody else's perspective. This changed the entire book for me. It was difficult. It was hard. I won't say that, but it was so much fun. It opened up these characters so all of a sudden I knew them way better than I had before. And it really gave me a direction, a clearer vision of where I needed to take the story. And so it's a really important exercise to do. If you have completely fallen out of love with your work in progress, this is an excellent way to reinvent what you have written. I mean, isn't it sometimes that you write it from one character's perspective, but maybe they're not the one that is telling the story. Maybe it is a different character. And it's really fun to explore that angle of it. So yeah, I loved it. What a great idea.
I can sympathize with that because my first try at my first book, which was Stone Bear's Betrayal, it was actually, the main character was Gerund. It was the father. He was the main character the whole way through. And then afterwards, a very steely-eyed beta reader is like, but the person that has the most to gain and the most to lose is the daughter. Mm-hmm. You need to make her the main character. I'm like, that's a lot of work. But it worked because she did have a lot more at stake for the entire life of the trilogy. She was the one that had the most at stake, and it changed fundamentally how the story worked and also where it went because I hadn't written the sequels yet. So yeah, that was actually really good advice. There's some different angles you can also look at. So maybe you're trying to write a serious, like a really serious scene, but you're trying to make it so serious it no longer works anymore and it just feels boring. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should try rewriting that scene, but make it funny.
Yeah.
Make it like...
Throw in some kind of comic, I don't know, exercise or moment to kind of to break up the tension of it.
Because I think sometimes we're like, oh, this is serious fiction. It all should be serious. But I think when you start adding those moments of joy and those moments of just silliness, that's what brings the characters to life. And that's what makes it like, oh, I love this moment because this horrible thing just happened. But this other guy brought in this joke and then everyone's like, you know, it changes the tone and it brings that energy and that life back. And so that's a different angle you can take.
That is really great. I love that so much.
So our third point is give yourself a break. Maybe you have been hitting the same story really, really hard and you're just kind of fed up with everything and the energy is not there. This is what I'm going to say. It's time for you to take a break and read something else in the same genre. Have a love affair with another book. Aww. So nothing is more exciting than sneaking away from your work in progress to remind yourself how good your genre can be. It will remind you why you love these stories, and it will help rekindle your excitement to write your own. I just picked up a new V. Schwab today and started reading it, and I love the lyricism in her prose. And it reminded me how beautiful descriptions can be again, because the book I read before was very cut and dry. It was a psychological thriller. It did not have good descriptions. And so it was really nice to step back into this world of magic again. It's rekindling my love for making words pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, right. I love it when I find good prose and I'm like, this is my dream. I love these people so much, you know. Of course, when you're reading the same genre, it's really good to keep up on what your genre is doing because sometimes it happens when you might accidentally write something that is very similar to another book. Or you can understand that maybe what you're writing is a bit dated and maybe that's why you've fallen out of love with it. So you might want to just see and experience what other people are doing and the newest trends within the genre and see what kind of, hopefully it might remind you of why you love this genre. And I love discovering writers within my genre that have done remarkably amazing things, just like you said with V.E. Schwab. And that always really inspires me to see the possibilities of what I can do and what's happening within the genre. So good
Very
call.
Good.
Okay, number 4. Reread the best parts.
Yeah, because you know the good ones.
Oh, yeah.
You know
absolutely.
The good ones.
I often rewind the parts I want to rewatch again. Have you ever done that? I recently rewatched the entire 6 episodes of Pride and Prejudice. And I rewatched episode 4 several times. And that's the one where Darcy jumps into the water. And it wasn't because, it's not because I have these deep fantasies of it, but I liked the magic of the moments that were created during that. When you are revisiting your work in progress, I think it's good to remember that you are pretty good at this. You do create magic when you are writing. And I do know exactly the parts that I love to reread. I was talking, this is another side story. I was talking about my second book because I got a review from somebody who just read it, and she just loved it. She's like, this was completely unpredictable. It was so fast paced because it just went everywhere. And so I talked to my husband about what was happening. And all of a sudden I'm like, I remember this was really fun to write. I had some really great ideas within this specific book. And so I went back. I'm like, I really need to remember why I like this book so much, because it does have some really great moments that I really needed to revisit. So yeah, good. I like that idea.
This is a good list.
Yeah.
I did a good job.
Yeah, you did.
To add to the rereading the best parts or re-experiencing the best parts, I generally won't stop something I've been watching and go back and rewatch something. I want to get the whole package experience.
Do you reread moments? Like when you finish a book, do you go back and kind of revisit specific parts?
It really depends on the book and if I'm doing it in print or an ebook or an audiobook. Because an audiobook, it's almost impossible to figure out where those parts are. And an ebook, unless you put a bookmark on it or you know a specific phrase that's used there, it's also more difficult than it's worth to go back. But there are specific books where it's just like, I remember this part and I want to see how they did that. And so I go more analytical, like especially if I want to remind myself why certain things worked really well for me. Like I want to go back and look at a scene and remind myself which parts I really was excited about writing and which parts felt like they flowed really well. Like was it the dialogue, or was it a particularly good setting description or something? And just to give myself that oomph saying, hey, you did it here and it worked really, really well. You can do it again.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So our last point is to create a mood board or a playlist. This is kind of writing adjacent, but I think it's something that is fun for everybody. And I'm saying serenade your story with music.
Wah,
wah, wah. Make a playlist that reflects the emotional tone of your story or the emotional tone of specific scenes, and then listen to it while working because it'll help you tap into those feelings and better capture them. Normally, I listen to pretty like the isochronic tones. I did not say that right. There's specific hertz. There's like 432 and there's these different scientific wavelengths that are supposed to make your brain work better. You know me and biohacking and science.
That is interesting. I don't know anything about that. And it's just
boring enough, but like it usually has like a little bit of a driving beat and it just has these tones and it doesn't distract you, but it drowns out like everyone else in the house, which is great. But I was writing the climax this last week and I needed something that had juice to it. I needed Thomas Bergerson. I needed Two Steps from Hell. I needed all my old favorites. So I pulled out my old playlist that is like super emotional music and let that go because I needed that really intense drama. So yeah, I had to pull out some of my old tricks.
That is so much fun. I'll have to revisit old Jody to see what kind of things are on your playlist. It's funny. For what I came up with was definitely Pinterest. I don't think that there's a better site to find inspiration than Pinterest.
And organize it.
Right?
I love that you can just make a board about anything you want.
Yes. I have lots of, I don't want to say vision boards. They have a lot of inspirational, like, this looks like something to me, or this is in the journey here, or whatever. And I like to pin a lot of that. So funny. super side story. I'm totally scrolling here. I pinned stuff for my fantasy story that I just adored, and it was so magical. And then I found out that one of the things that I pinned was in Portugal. So my whole goal when I went to Portugal is I must find this tiny little castle that's in the middle of a lake. And I did, but it took us so long to find it. I knew exactly where it was, but then when we went around the grounds, I couldn't find it. It took us a trip back at the end of our trip to find it. But anyway, it was extremely inspiring. So that's what I say is put something inspiring on maybe your backdrop or your screensaver, your wallpaper, whatever, and just revisit that Pinterest board that you've created for all your magic moments to help inspire you.
And what's terrific with Pinterest is it pays attention to what you interact with. So if you pin or like or whatever things,
yeah, it's like then you might
it will give you more of that flavor of thing, which will help you find more things that can inspire you.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So it's a fun way of really digging into, okay, well, I want this setting to be kind of like this. Give me everything you've got that looks kind of like this. And then they're like, ooh, shiny. I would have never thought of that. Yeah. Now I have this really cool well.
Yes, I have so many wells pinned. I should share them because I have some great inspirational boards for sure. So
all right. So you might have fallen out of love with your work in progress, but that doesn't mean that you guys are going to be separated forever. You're unlike people, your stories can be exactly what you want them to be. And hopefully we've shared something today that will help you find your passion to work on that work of progress again that you've fallen out of love for.
Oh, that's lovely. What's our listener assignment?
So if you do have one of these lost, forgotten projects, these poor, sad, unfortunate souls, take some or all of this advice that we shared today and see if you can romance it back into being that thing you really want to work on again. I challenge you to find one thing and just try it and then tell us about it because sure, why not?
That sounds lovely.
What is our next episode about?
Okay, well, I have feelings. We're going to talk about fantasy versus romantasy. And it's really going to be kind of a debate about the genre and what kind of things we're facing as authors. So, yeah, I hope that's interesting.
Continuing on with our Cupid season,
I guess. So, yeah.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. As always, a huge thank you for listening today. If you liked anything you've heard, we do have a Patreon. We have a Buy Us a Coffee. And as always, subscribe, and share.
Share, everyone.
Yeah.
Share your love for your work in progress.
That works too. All right. This has been fun.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
That doesn't even make sense. Why did I even just say that?
Not sure.
I sniffed, just so you know.